How to light for a window look. Hello everybody, my name is Marco Barnioli, I'm a cinematographer, and today I'm going to show you a commercial where they have this nice window look, like someone is standing on the window watching out and the light is really wraps nicely across the face. Also some really nice VFX in there. I'm going to show you how you get this window look and how you work with VFX, how you light for them, how you plan your shoot to make your work better for everyone. So after watching the cinematography breakdown, you should be able to shoot something like this. So this is the first shot we're looking at, and I have the feeling this is a famous person. I know the face, but I don't know where she is. So write it down in comments for me. That would be a huge help for me. And what do we see in this image? We have this nice dark background, nice half-lit look. It's really small ram. I would more call it half-lit, as this is a ram look. And this nice coolish skin tones and this nice poppy window light feeling. It's not really soft, it's not very hard, it's right on the middle that it looks nice. So how do we achieve a look like this? First things first, establish a window. In this shot we can clearly see her. She's somewhere in Paris or something similar and watching outside. You don't always get this window look with a real mirror, so they light the scene. Also, everything here could be fake. But in this scenario, I think it isn't, because we have a few outside shots where she's walking around at the same location. But we imagine a scenario where you want to shoot something similar and then you don't have the same possibilities as them. First, show the window so the audience knows, okay, this is the lighting we're going for. The nice thing about that, so that we have our lighting community, is we work with a silhouette. Don't always have to expose everything nicely and even and three-dimensional. Sometimes simplicity is more. The only thing for this look you have to do is expose for the outside, and automatically everything in there becomes more dark. We don't have dirty stops of dynamic range, but we don't need to. This is the look we are going for. And sometimes it's much easier to work this way, because now, as you can see, we limited the view of the audience to the most important part, and that's her. When you try to frame something working with silhouettes, try to frame someone in a brighter spot, because now you don't need to add any extra light, because she is pretty much edged by the brighter background, and we can clearly see her body, her motion, everything, even her face when she turns her head a little bit. So perfect, done. A nice silhouette with limited space framed inside the window. Always great shot, as long you don't try to middle asset. What I mean with this, don't try to find exposure where this is somehow bright, we see a little bit and the background is close to overexposing. That's the start or the end of everything. You have to commit to one exposure, and most of the time expose for the highlight. Don't try to clip the outside. Is a more cinematic way when you want to call it like that. Back to our closer shot. So you can get this look with a window, no problem. But how would I light it when we don't have a window? This is the process I would go. First things first is you can put her on the window, but sometimes maybe like a different background. So you just drop her somewhere in the house, because it doesn't matter. You established beforehand, okay, she stands here. So when you put her in the next scene and close up somewhere else, the audience is not smart enough to notice that she's now standing here. So in this scenario, the background is not that fascinating or that nice. But when you want a nice background, you can totally do it without focusing on continuity or something like that. But it doesn't matter. We established the scenario before. When she stands somewhere else and looking in one direction and light is coming from, people will still think that she's there. So the first thing you would build is a butterfly frame, and always try to mimic the size of a window that she stands for. When you have a smaller window, try this size. When you have a bigger window, try this size, because now they feel the same. Lighting has a lot to do with feeling. So when you now had a smaller butterfly frame or a much bigger butterfly frame, the lighting would feel different, because a bigger one would feel like maybe she's outside. Smaller one would feel more like, oh, she's getting lit by something. But we have one butterfly frame. This was a big door, so a 12 by 12, 8 by 8, something in that direction. Pretty much feels the same as the light before. So next thing, most of the time there are also curtains in front of windows, so the lights gets a little bit diffuse. So I would always go for a quarter like diffusion in this scenario, so just a little bit. And optional, you can put an ultra bounce on the other side, put an HMI. I think most of the time HMI has still a better look than LEDs, looks more like light from outside. The new Aputure Storm series is also very, very good, but when you have an HMI and a crew to do it, I would still do it that way. I worked with the new Aputures a few times in the last few weeks. They're amazing. I never did a side-by-side test, but for now, I would say when you don't have this new Aputures, try HMI. Now use an M18, M14, it depends on how bright and dark your location is, and bounce it into your ultra bounce. This light gets diffused, and now we basically have a huge window with a quarter frost diffusion or something like that, which still is a little bit punchy, not that diffused. Like here, as you can see, the light is diffused, but we still have specular highlights, and the roll-off is not crazy. But because of the big size of the butterfly, it feels very nice and like a window. Now there's several things you can still add. Now it depends on, okay, who's the actress? Does she want to look a certain way when she's a famous person? There's also more regulations most of the time how you have to alter the light. And the baddest thing you can have in a situation like this, that you get raccoon eyes. So the eyes are too dark in a scene like this. So you try to put a bounce, a reflector a little bit under her, fill in just these eye sockets. Or other thing you can do when the wrap is not good enough, you put a light matte just on the same position as her face is looking on a small percentage to fill in those shadows a little bit. As you can see here now, a lot of people will notice, oh, no backlight. Wouldn't it look much better when we add a backlight? Somehow in a lot of commercials nowadays, when there's no real reason for a backlight, because here is, you don't see anything at all, it just doesn't matter. When the fill ratios and exposure ratios are all right and we go for this look and we still have separation because the background is a little bit brighter here than her hair, can still see every little hair that's popping out, there's enough separation. So an edge light sometimes feels too lit, because in real life you don't see often an edge light on zombie when you're honest to yourself. So the edge light is dying a little bit in a lot of situations when you want this real nice looking look. The only thing I would still add is maybe also another LED light, just a smaller one, to give the hair a little bit more kick when it's getting too dark, to just add a little bit more glam and more pop to the scenery, but that should be good for a scene like this. Then we have this car scene, which is a really nice scenario. To get exposure in a car that looks decently good is very, very difficult, because most of the time it feels very lit, because somehow the only thing we have when you have a shot that's just a throwaway, so this one shot, maybe people put a 150 light dome on a 1200X or XT26 and just blast it on her. And that's okay most of the time when it's not that important shot, you don't have close up or anything like that. But otherwise you still have to work with a big butterfly here and use several lights when it's outside to bounce into it to just get a nice wrap and exposure on her. But when you don't have the budget, the time or anything like that, try to do just big softbox, strong light, strong as you have. And the other thing you can do, try to double diffuse it. Put a frost frame or just the biggest size you have on set in between to make a little bit more wrap. But because we have here a pretty wide shot, so the good thing in ads like this, sometimes you can not destroy the car, but getting this angle is actually pretty difficult, because we are on the chair behind next to the driver and it looks like it would be away. So they removed maybe the seat. Otherwise I can't imagine how they get a good or decent big camera in a place like that. Even though this looks like 12mm full frame, it's still not possible in a car to get this frame. And on wider shots you can light harder, so on people, to create more contrast. So the technique that they maybe just used a light dome, or maybe in a set like this, typical light would be also in Sky Panel 360 with a softbox, which also feels very windowy, has enough punch. When you put it a little further away, it's possible that you get exactly that kind of diffusion and contrast. When you're working with VFX in a shot like this, it's much easier when you have overcast or really directional light. What I mean with this is directional light when she's like, as you can see, light is clearly coming from here. So when you add a background light on the walls where it's also coming from here, the VFX artist knows, okay, okay, the light should be from here, so she can add and post a light there and everything starts to look more realistic because the light is so obvious. When you're working with X, make the light obvious. So, as stupid as it sounds, but practicals close to the VFX or lamps, so everything that has a defined light source next to the VFX, and we get much brighter and nicer results. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate subscription from you. Check out the video descriptions for the answer, and I'm Marco Bagnoli and see you next time.